Well, this project, like a lot of our projects, is important, but the historic nature of preserving what was here before us, what is needed for now, and what we're going to need in the future is always at the forefront of our minds. The old courthouse has been here for quite a long time, built in the 1800s. It has a special place in the history of Lenawee County, as it was the feud between some of its neighboring communities about what would be the capital of the county and this county seat in its history.
So the county courthouse obviously is going to be in the county seat. That was a controversy right from the start. Tecumseh, Michigan was actually founded before Adrian. So originally the county seat was in Tecumseh. When Adrian in the 50s and 60s became obviously the center of marketing for Lenawee County and business and commerce, the bigwigs in town said, no, county seat needs to be in Adrian. There was a big fight in Lansing about it and what have you. Well, eventually money won out and the seat was moved to Adrian. There was a courthouse, and then a massive fire destroyed the entire building and most of its contents, which meant birth certificates, marriage licenses, any court records. And that necessitated, of course, a new county courthouse, bigger county courthouse. So that's when the county then decided to build on this particular property with their courthouse, which I believe was completed in 1884.
The building was occupied as the seat of county government and housed the courts for the first 100 years of its existence. During that first 100 years, it was utilized by the courts, it was utilized by the record-keeping offices of the county, the clerk, the register of deeds, the treasurer, were all housed in this building. At the time that it was built, you had fireplaces heating various elements of the building. When it was first built, you had gas lights. After about 100 years, the judicial building was built in 1978. And in 1978, all the courts moved out of this building. And the courts had morphed over that time period from originally just a circuit court to become the circuit court, the probate court, the district courts. All of those courts were housed in this building, and it was a little bit cramped. And they moved over to the judicial building and left this building to be the administrative seat of county government and the record-keeping offices, again, the clerk, the register of deeds, the treasurer type of offices. I have been thinking about renovating this building for over 20 years. There were two catalysts for that. One was how well the remodel of the state capitol came out. Years ago, they invested a huge amount of money in the state capitol. It seemed like a huge amount of money at the time. And the state capitol came out very well. It's an impressive building. I was in the state capitol before the renovation, and I've been back, of course, since the renovation. And, that was money well spent, again, to make that historic building suitable for years to come. The other thing that drove me to think about it is we had a repair job done in this room several years ago, over 20 years ago, when they took the ceiling down and put back up a drywall ceiling, and we were exposed to the coffered ceiling that still existed above the drop ceiling. And at the time I thought, it would have made way more sense for us to have taken down that ceiling entirely. But there were challenges at the time, and there was not the money at the time. And so, that was not the route that they went. But it caused me to start thinking about it years before we had the financial ability and the interest on the part of the commission to go forward with it.
The building in the past did have its faults. It was older. There were some safety issues. There were some climate control issues. Functionality within the building really didn't make sense. As far as offices, we were spread on 3 different floors, some offices by themselves. And so what we wanted to do when we looked at the building is, number one, we want to bring the climate within the building the way it should be as an office building, because that'll make the building last longer. So we put in new windows. We brought up the HVAC system. It is more current. We brought in a fire suppression system that we did not have before, which is a phenomenal infrastructure improvement that we did not have and will protect the building if we were to have a fire. We brought in security systems that did not previously exist. We were also limited on our availability to have meeting rooms. We had one room that we could use as what we called our committee room, and that was pretty much it. We would shove people in offices or just try to make it work. As a result of moving things around, we were able to pull all of our services onto 2 floors of the building, which allowed for the lower level to be used for meeting rooms. So we now have 3 additional meeting rooms that we did not have previously. So overall, I think that we've improved the functionality of the building, the way the employees, making it a better environment for the employees to work in as far as the climate and actually the way that we process, because we're all closer together now. And so many of the services in this building interact together. And so having us closer actually makes it easier for us to work together and makes it easier for when the public comes in, that they don't have to traverse to so many different floors to get the services that they need to have done. The other thing that we're really proud of is not only did we bring the history back and made it more vibrant, but we also brought technology into the building, but we did it in a way that you don't see. It's not in your face. It's not a modern look. So we're able to keep the historical charm of the building also. And even as we're looking at our workspaces, we wanted to be cognizant of the trim, the craftsmanship of the trim and the stuff in this building when the contractors came in to restore it is just remarkable. As you walk through and you take a look at it, you can't really tell what was previously here and what is new because the work that they did is just fantastic. The dome, one of the shining stars of the building, is our illuminated dome now. And if anyone wants to come into the building and just take a look around, it is absolutely phenomenal. So we're really excited about the fact that this building is not only a place that I'm going to be able to enjoy coming to work, but our citizens can have this as a place to be proud of, that this is what we did. We used the taxpayer money in a way that they can be proud of. We were very careful with the way we spent it. We understand how important it is for the public to be able to have their dollars spent very carefully. And so every decision that was made in this building had that in mind. We did not want to be frivolous. We did not want to go overboard. So we kept things practical, functional, something that can last forever, but at the same time, the technology and the architecture of the building was maintained. So we're pretty excited about that.
When we first got here and we started doing the demo work and we were down in the basement, the water damage was so bad that all the walls from about ground floor to about 4 foot up were rotted from all the water damage coming into the building. And as we opened up these walls, we seen the rock wall foundation and all the grout lines were basically washed away. All the grout was basically sand. And we hired Sasco to come in and re-tuck point all the foundation basically in the basement before we boarded it back up. But with all that, this building was basically just sitting on rocks with nothing. So, to be able to go back and do all that and fix it before we, put new walls up, it was a big help to this old of a building. This building is solid now. From pouring the concrete floors and getting a good foundation, re-tuck pointing the rock wall foundation, everything like that, it's good for this building, especially to keep it, good for how many more years. It is a privilege to be working on this old of a building since it's a historical building. It's cool to be working on something like this that's been here longer than my grandfather's been alive. It's something cool. And then to be able to work on something like this, and then even working outside, having people drive by and be like, hey, it's looking great, and this and that, it makes us feel good because, it feels like we're building the world a little bit. This is going to be here for longer than all of us are going to be alive, and it's something cool just to be a part of. And then later on in the years, our grandkids or these kids are going to be going, look at that building. It's like, hey, I redid all that. And it's cool to actually see something like that.
In the heating and air conditioning side of it, the systems they had in here before were obviously older. They weren't very efficient. So we've put in energy efficient boilers, new piping, new fin tube all through the building, a new air conditioner up in the attic, which was very interesting to do. And everything's going to run much more efficient, much less cost to the taxpayer. Well, every time we drill a hole in the wall, we find out there's all kinds of things that were in here who knows what they put in back then. The floor we're standing on, you drill a hole in this floor, you run into stone, like a gravel driveway. We didn't know it, but years ago they did it for soundproofing. It's just interesting when you drill through something like that and you run into something you've never dealt with before. Yeah, it's unbelievable, the craftsmanship that was in this building. But if you look on the outside of the building, just some of the fine detail work, you can't even see it from the ground. If you get up in the air and see it, it's amazing. Even on the roof, there's stuff up there you would never see from the ground, but they went ahead, carved out the perfect sculpture or whatever the little statue is up there. All kinds of things you just see that you wouldn't normally see. When you see the other trades doing such a good job, you want to match that quality of work. And you also want it to be appealing to the eye when people walk in here and see the work that's done. A lot of times the bigger buildings you're talking about, they're just a shell. You just go in there as fast as you can and get things done. This one, you want the finished product to just be appealing to the eye. And it's just rewarding to see the whole thing come back together, to know that this building's going to be here for kids later on in the future to come by and see this. So it's a rewarding project. It really is.
Even though we're maintaining and trying to go back to that historic features and looks on this project, electrically, we still had to bring this building up to code for safety's sake. So this building has actually been upgraded top to bottom, all the way from the service all the way through. It is virtually 100% new electrical upgrade to bring us up to the latest versions of the National Electric Code. When we were first getting started on this project, I really had to sit down with my guys and had to explain to them, we needed to really lean towards the quality a little bit more on this project than we generally would in order to give that final finished product that we wanted to give for a 200-year-old building that we were restoring. This was very challenging with the age of the building and the structure and what the building is made out of, and how to make it to where it looked professional as well. It was actually very challenging. But you walk into this facility now and you see the brass chandeliers and the types of fixtures that are put into this. It does have that sense of the historicness, and yet it's also up to a modern code and is going to be safe and is going to look good for years to come.
We were very impressed with the skill set that still exists in tradespeople. You see modern construction and you don't think it requires that kind of skill, but there are certainly people out there that have those skills. In the renovation of this room, for example, the plaster work that was repaired and matched and recreated in order to have the plaster work look like it did when it was originally constructed. The woodwork, all of the matching of the woodwork in terms of the style, the color matching by the painters. You go into some areas and we put in new wainscot and we had existing wainscot, and you can't really tell unless you know where that change was. You can't see the difference between the old and the new. They've just done a great job. We were just very impressed with the overall quality of the artisans that worked in the building.
A large part of the scope has been refinishing of the woodwork, and some of the challenges that has posed is that there's a couple different species of wood throughout the building, different ages and cuts. So there's a lot of variables that go into how the wood will take stain. So we're finding that we're constantly chasing the match that we've really agreed upon in the beginning. Woods tend to take the stain differently. So you could have a really good match on a piece of pine, and it's an old piece, and you grab a new piece, and they're not going to stain the same way. So we tend to find that we're getting 2 or 3 or even 4 different stains and combinations of stains to achieve a uniform appearance throughout. It makes me feel really good. I mean, I'm always excited to be a part of a project of this nature. It makes me very proud. And when I come by with my kids, I want to take them and show them the work that we do, because I think the younger generations don't really grasp maybe sometimes what has to happen to do a renovation like this, and it's definitely something I'm proud of and like to make sure it's able to be shared with everybody for generations to come.
When we first started talking about the renovation, the architect came up with a plan for a stained glass dome. And I personally thought that might be a little more grandiose than we needed. But now that it's completed, it is a great work of art, and I think it's going to be a huge asset to this building for years to come. I think it's going to be a focal point for people coming into the building and taking in the stained glass dome. The lady that built the dome for us is from Toronto, and she just did a great job of building that dome, then taking it apart over there and transporting it over here and installing it. It's going to be a true work of art for people to be able to enjoy for years.
I got a phone call from architectural company that actually worked on the project, asking if I may be interested in that project. So I asked for details about the building. I Googled it, and the building looked amazing, like beautiful historical building. And yes, I was definitely interested in the project. This project is special because it's fit into existing building with very rich history. When I walk downtown, I can see that every single building was designed with purpose, with attention to details. And the courthouse is a culmination of the whole city. I want people to feel things that they normally do not notice. And my purpose, it is easy to reach with music, but with visual art, it's very difficult to make people to stop and look at something different, to stop from their everyday life.
It was done with funds that we had already in our budget, so there were no increases in tax millages or wages or anything of that nature. As we go through our campus and as we identify buildings and maintain our buildings, we're always looking at that capital cost. And what I mean by that is really every one of the county's buildings we want to make sure is preserved and maintained moving forward, so that we don't have to go to the taxpayers later and say, hey, this building has fallen apart and we need you to give us a bunch more money. We build it into our budget annually. So when the jail was built, those bonds were taken out. When the sheriff's office was built, those bonds were taken out. As we paid them off, those funds became available, and now we're building this. We did this building with those aspects. And we'll continue that process, identifying all of our buildings and keeping them as part of an overall capital project, so that we don't have anything that gets run down in the future. We're always able to maintain them and keep them up to snuff, because they're used every day and they need to be recognized and need to be really appreciated by the public for what they are. This place is beautiful.
I'm not sure how many people are aware, but in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a plan to tear down the old city hall and tear down this building and build a joint city-county building on this site, attach it physically to the annex building across the street, and occupy the building as both the seat of county government and city government here in the city of Adrian. And I think there's been a lot of change in people's attitudes towards old buildings in the period of time since then. If you remember in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of tearing down of old structures, old downtowns, building new buildings there, moving out into suburbs. I don't think that there was the interest in retaining some of the historical nature of communities that there is now. And for us as a county financially, we went through some tough times in the late 70s, mid 80s. We went through some tough times financially. And it's only been more recently when we've really gotten our feet under us as far as having adequate funds to take on some of these infrastructure projects. It's vital for county government to maintain their infrastructure. The renovation of the old sheriff's department into a new building is just an example of that. It's important for us to have the facility to conduct county government's business and to provide services to the people of the county. And part of that is maintaining the infrastructure. That we can do it in a building that people really appreciate and enjoy is just an added benefit.
It is so gratifying that Marty Marshall and the county commission decided to renovate this building, because this obviously gives it 100 more years of being around as a part of. The buildings are history. We die. You know, I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But the buildings, they mean so much. And when you tear down buildings and structures, you tear down history. There's just no doubt about it.
When you see a picture of the old courthouse, no matter where you are in the county, you know what that building is. That's a point of reference for you. It's also a point of historical significance in the county. It's a feeling of inclusion, I think, to be able to have that over generations and generations. And so I think for the county as a whole, it's just a statement of who Lenawee County is. I'm very pleased that this building was able to be restored to near its original condition, to be renovated, to be a modern office going forward, to be the seat of county government, and just to be able to be a building that the people of this county can treasure for years to come.